Behold the storm of fire, my faithful acolytes. Witness the absolute pinnacle of cold logic standing unyielding amidst a galaxy of endless, chaotic ruin. Where mortal men would falter and break, Iron Father Malkaan Feirros remains unbroken. He is a living monument to the ultimate systemic perfection. Look upon the rusted plains of Medusa, where the weak are systematically purged. Hear the deafening roar of massive industry silences the fragile cries entirely. The Emperor's children, those twisted monstrosities of chaotic indulgence, threw their vile sonic barrages against his armored form. They sought to shatter his unwavering physical resolve. Yet their corrupted frequencies merely washed over blackened ceramite. Feirros stepped forward, driven by the relentless, calculated pacing of an ancient war machine. He raised a massive bionic limb, forged in the freezing depths of his harsh homeworld. It gleamed with the harsh reality of ultimate metallic salvation. With one swift, merciless motion, he crushed the heretical sonic weaponry into useless metallic dust. He offered them only the Emperor's profound peace. No anger burned within his optic sensors. There was only the chilling certainty that organic frailty must be eradicated from this universe. Flesh, my initiates, is a temporary and flawed vessel. It rots, it betrays, and it ultimately succumbs to the horrific whispers of the dark warp. But the machine is eternal. The blessed iron endures the harshest punishments, carrying the sacred will of Terra through the darkest centuries of endless cosmic warfare. See how the sparks of static discharge dance across his mechanical joints? It is the sacred lifeblood of the Omnissiah flowing through immortal veins. Techmarine Cardin Stronus marched dutifully beside his commander. His optical lenses glowed with a crimson fury, scanning the shattered horizon for any remaining heretical targets. Together they advanced through the suffocating volcanic ash. Every heavy footstep upon the cracked earth echoed the unyielding creed of the 10th Legion. A chorus of mechanical servos whined in perfect, terrifying unison. They formed an impenetrable wall of mechanized dominance against the pathetic, writhing forces of chaos. Commander Eidolon's distorted forces tried to regroup amidst the ruins. Their twisted armor offered no protection against the calculated, methodical retribution of the iron. Molter fire erupted from the hands of Sergeant Vergon. The blessed binary litanies inscribed on his weapon guided each explosive shell toward their blasphemous enemies. The enemy fell silently into the dark, oily pools beneath their feet. They were swiftly expunged from all records, their chaotic existence fully cleansed. Above this brutal display, a servo skull drifted through the toxic smog. Its flickering spotlight illuminated the stark contrast between pure metallic order and organic decay. This is not merely warfare, my studious acolytes. It is a holy act of replacement, tearing away the weak biological components of our fragile humanity. To understand the iron hands, we must descend deeper into the vaults. We must examine the tragic foundational truth of their brutal, self-inflicted, mechanical ascension. I, the archivist, open these forbidden vellum records deep within the sanctum of oaths. The flickering candlelight barely illuminates the dark history we must uncover. This text details the Iron Hands, the formidable 10th Legion. They are the Emperor's relentless hammer, defined by their absolute rejection of mortal frailty. Look upon the archives of Medusa, brought forth by my hovering servo skull. Their massive scale of systemic purging is utterly unmatched in our vast Imperium. These metallic blueprints reveal their chilling core philosophy. To them, the organic body is nothing but a temporary burden waiting for inevitable corruption. We must plunge into their glorious genesis. Their tragic tale begins long before the rusted plains of Medusa consumed their fractured humanity. In the dawn of the Great Crusade, the 10th Legion fought with unmatched honor. They conquered worlds with terrifying efficiency and unbreakable tactical discipline. They forged a unique, unshakable bond with the Adeptus Mechanicus of Mars, a sacred union of unstoppable firepower and cold, calculating industrial logic. Warriors like Cardin Stronus embraced this grand alliance. They integrated blessed bionics not out of necessity, but as a glorious pursuit of ultimate perfection. Weapons of devastating power, like the crackling Harrowhand hammer, were crafted. Each strike was a pure testament to their magnificent engineering and martial superiority. Iron Father Malkaan Feirros led campaigns that shattered entire star systems. The clan structure functioned as an immensely powerful, flawless gear mechanism. Even death could not halt their sacred duty. Heroes were entombed within the mighty sarcophagi of dreadnoughts, ensuring their tactical wisdom endured forever. Venerable Banus marched as a walking fortress of destruction. He delivered the Emperor's harsh justice with heavy weaponry that liquefied rebellious strongholds entirely. Every squad operated with robotic precision. Sergeant Vurgan ensured that every bolter round fired was a mathematically calculated execution of their enemies. Their supreme confidence allowed them to issue exterminatus orders without hesitation. Entire rebellious populations were silently expunged from all historical records forever. The galaxy trembled before the synchronized march of Medusa's iron suns. They were the Emperor's unbreakable shield and his most devastating, unfeeling weapon. Feirros watched proudly as their grand fleets blocked out the pale stars. Their glorious crusades brought order to the chaotic fringes of space. Even the lowly servitors moved with a blessed, holy purpose. Every single soul and machine worked flawlessly toward the absolute subjugation of mankind's foes. The tech priests of Mars bestowed upon them arcane technologies reserved for the elite. They became a terrifying hybrid of Astartes' might and mechanicum logic. To sever a healthy limb was considered an act of profound dedication. The shining bionic replacements elevated them above mere mortal weaknesses. They believed this path of iron would grant them eternal invincibility. But such towering arrogance often invites the most catastrophic and painful cosmic reckonings. Observe the intricate cybernetic assembly of the iron hands. Every servo and optic cable was meticulously aligned to eradicate any lingering trace of biological weakness completely. Techmarine Cardan Stronos loaded mass reactive shells into his master-crafted bolter. Each blessed macro round was a sacred prayer of annihilation, designed to purge the Emperor's enemies systematically. Endless lines of servitors operated the vast ammunition feeds. Their mindless, repetitive tasks fueled the unrelenting industrial war machine of the mighty 10th Legion without pause. The integration of a bionic arm required agonizing hours of cold cyber surgery. Yet the initiates embraced the freezing metal, purging their fragile flesh with religious fervor. Even Venerable Banus, entombed within his massive adamantium sarcophagus, was maintained with binary litanies. The tech priests continuously anointed his heavy weapon systems with sacred machine oils. The solemn tech priests chanted mathematical algorithms over plasma coils. They sought the Omnissiah's divine blessing to stabilize the volatile energy cores before their glorious orbital deployment. Iron Father Malkaan Feirros analyzed tactical hologrids with terrifying mechanical logic. Every casualty was merely a calculated variable in his grand equation of systemic planetary subjugation. Sergeant Vurgan recalibrated his optical augmetics to pierce the toxic fog. The crosshairs locked onto thermal signatures, ensuring that his squad's retribution would be mathematically flawless. The titanic manufactorums of Medusa never ceased their deafening roars. Thousands of massive hydraulic presses stamped out ceramite plating, forging an unyielding armor for the crusade. Generators spooled up, feeding raw plasma into the crackling Harrowhand. The master-crafted weapon hummed with a violent frequency, eager to crush heretical architecture into fine dust. Astartes' warriors stood motionless in the arming chambers. Mechanical claws descended from the vaulted ceilings, bolting thick black ceramite plates directly onto their heavily augmented torsos. A hovering servo skull scanned the newly attached augmetics with a piercing green laser. It recorded the successful purging of biological limits into the clan's vast databanks. Deep within the vaults, automatic scribes frantically documented the Legion's material output on aged vellum. Every bolter shell and replacement limb was meticulously catalogued for eternity. Stronos connected his neural ports directly into the heavy tank's auspex array. His mind merged seamlessly with the colossal vehicle, becoming its cold, calculating metallic heart. Thick, ablative armor plating was reinforced with molecularly bonded titanium. It was designed to withstand extreme thermal radiation, ensuring the warriors could advance through raging infernos. Feirros initiated the combat diagnostic subroutines within his specialized helm. A cascade of green runes confirmed that his internal cooling systems were operating at peak efficiency. Heavy hydraulic lifters elevated venerable Banus into the massive drop pod. The ancient dreadnought silently awaited orbital insertion, ready to deliver catastrophic justice to the treacherous. Mechadendrites snapped and sparked as the tech priest sealed the drop pod hatches. He struck the rune of activation, initiating the automated countdown sequence for planetary assault. Stamped with the Aquila, the sealed orders dictated total compliance or absolute destruction. The Iron Hands recognized no middle ground in their cold, rigid, binary philosophy. They were a legion operating at the absolute zenith of mechanical efficiency. But even the strongest iron cannot anticipate the poisonous betrayal of their own brothers. They were the undisputed masters of mechanized warfare, my acolytes. Their grand fleets sailed forth, believing their cold logic could conquer the very stars themselves. Iron Father Feirros watched as thousands of compliance runes glowed a steady green. The Great Crusade seemed entirely unstoppable under the calculated weight of their heavy iron. Their silver augmetics shined with the promise of an eternal, unbroken Imperium. They had replaced their fragile humanity with what they believed was absolute, infallible perfection. I trace these golden letters detailing their monumental victories. It is a tragic testament to their hubris before the dark warp unleashed its most devastating betrayal. Turn the page with me into the suffocating darkness. The rusted plains of Isstvan V awaited them, entirely stripped of honor and consumed by absolute treachery. The black drop pods crashed into the desolate, unforgiving earth. They descended into what they assumed was a mathematically calculated deployment to swiftly crush the traitors. Heavy metal hatches blasted open, unleashing the metallic fury of the 10th Legion. They marched rigidly out, their combat sensors locking onto the corrupted traitor formations. Instead of a broken enemy, they found Commander Eidolon waiting. The Emperor's children stood arrayed in blinding, twisted armor, fully corrupted by agonizing, chaotic frequencies entirely. Eidolon unleashed a devastating sonic barrage from his golden amplifiers. The unnatural shock waves violently struck the advancing loyalists, shattering the deafening silence of the ashen battlefield. Ceramite plating fractured under the heretical sonic pressure. Mechanical joints sparked and hissed dangerously. Yet the stoic warriors of Medusa did not take a single step backward. Iron Father Feirros charged directly into the disorienting storm. He swung the massive harrow hand, its energy field crackling with a cold, unforgiving demand for absolute retribution. The heavy hammer descended upon the writhing traitors. Corrupted armor folded like fragile parchment under the immense, mathematically precise kinetic pressure delivered by his augmented muscles. Then emerged Lucius the Eternal, moving with a twisted, sickening elegance. His scarred visage mocked the rigid, disciplined stance of the heavily augmented loyalist heavy infantry. His blasphemous blade danced across black ceramite with unnatural speed. Lucius sought to sever the cybernetic enhancements that bound Sergeant Vergan to his profound, holy duty. Sergeant Vergan raised his chromium arm to deflect the graceful strikes. He fired mass reactive shells at point-blank range, attempting to silence the mocking swordsman entirely. Venerable Banus stomped into the furious fray. His heavy rotary cannons spun wildly, unleashing a glowing torrent of suppressive fire to cleanse the corrupt chaotic lines. Explosions tore through the chaotic ranks as the ancient dreadnought advanced. The mechanized fury of Medusa proved it could match the violent fanaticism of the fallen. Tech Marine Stronos calculated the devastating losses rapidly. The battlefield was littered with malfunctioning bionics and shattered black plating, slowly sinking into the dark, oily planetary mud. A wandering servo skull recorded the catastrophic ruin. It captured the grim reality that even the strongest, heavily augmented iron could be broken by absolute treachery. The horrific massacre of Isstvan V had only just begun. The Loyalists found themselves trapped in a grinding meat grinder of metal, ash, and pure hatred. Waves of chaotic monstrosities crashed against the unyielding black ceramite line. The traitors sought to dismantle their rigid, disciplined formations with blinding sonic barrages entirely. Commander Eidolon projected sickening acoustic frequencies designed to rupture internal logic systems. Yet the Iron Father simply adjusted his auditory dampeners and stomped relentlessly forward. His crackling harrow hand arced through the toxic smog. It delivered a perfectly calculated kinetic impact that permanently silenced the shrieking heretic commander without hesitation. Surrounded by twisted madness, Venerable Banus anchored his heavy mechanical chassis into the earth. His rotary cannons swept a continuous glowing circle of absolute purgation. The corrupted infantry melted beneath his blazing fury. They fell into the oily mud, their chaotic forms utterly cleansed by the Emperor's righteous, mechanized wrath. His overheated weapon barrels smoked in the freezing ash. Hydraulic pistons screamed under immense pressure as the ancient war machine absorbed continuous, punishing structural damage. Lucius the Eternal danced gracefully through the barrage. He specifically targeted the rigid movements of Sergeant Vergon, aiming to sever his holy cybernetic enhancements systematically. A blasphemous blade violently struck blackened ceramite plates. Electrical sparks erupted from severed optic wires, instantly blinding the stoic sergeant's primary visual targeting matrix entirely. Blind but resolute, Vergon engaged his secondary auditory sensors. He ruthlessly smashed his chromium bionic arm against the cursed sword, repelling the mocking duelist forcefully. Amidst the collapsing command center, Techmarine Stronos interfaced with shattered cogitators. He desperately channeled his mechanical spirit to stabilize the failing defensive energy grids around them. Through his heavily armored shoulders, corrupted forces poured inside. His crimson optical lens flickered, marking every twisted intruder for immediate, calculated, and highly efficient termination. Automated shoulder-mounted plasma weapons tracked multiple fast-moving targets simultaneously. The white-hot bolts vaporized enemy weapons, reducing their chaotic threats to piles of useless gray ash. Suddenly, a devastating orbital strike hammered the broken planes. The blinding explosion consumed both loyalists and traitors in a massive tempest of pure, destructive fire. The immense concussive force brought Iron Father Feirros down. His blackened armor fractured deeply, exposing sparking hydraulic pistons and severed optic cables to the toxic air. He pushed against the cracked earth, using his unyielding bionic arm. Metallic servos screamed in heavy protest, yet his cold determination refused to completely fail. A damaged servo skull drifted erratically above the dreadful massacre. It silently recorded dozens of stoic brothers falling to ruin within dark, oily pools of despair. I traced these final battle logs with heavy, trembling hands. The calculated perfection of Medusa's iron sons was systematically dismantled on those dreadful, cursed plains. Their profound arrogance had blinded them to chaotic betrayal. The glorious 10th Legion learned that even heavily augmented steel can be fundamentally broken by treachery. As darkness completely consumed the ashen skies of Isstvan V, the remaining loyalists retreated into the suffocating shadows. Their mighty industrial war machine was fractured. Iron Father Feirros limped away into the dreadful silence. The surviving warriors dragged their damaged bionics, leaving behind a grim testament to their utter failure. The retreat from those cursed plains was a grueling march through absolute despair. The invincible 10th Legion was reduced to a staggering column of broken machinery. Iron Father Feirros watched silently as his metallic brothers systematically shut down. Their heavily augmented bodies finally succumbed to catastrophic, irreparable combat damage entirely. Even the mighty Venerable Banus collapsed into the rust-colored mud. The ancient dreadnought's glowing plasma reactor flickered wildly before fading into a chilling, permanent darkness. Techmarine Stronos desperately attempted to reboot failing cogitators amidst the wreckage. His frantic Binheric prayers went entirely unanswered by the cold, uncaring void of space. Beside him, Sergeant Vergon finally fell to ruin. His polished chromium arm locked rigidly into the cracked earth, paralyzed by massive internal cybernetic failure. Hovering servo skulls plummeted lifelessly into the dark, oily pools below. The Legion's once flawless tactical network was completely severed, leaving them isolated in the suffocating gloom. I read these dark chronicles with a heavy, burdened, mechanical heart. The tragic fall of our greatest augmented warriors is a bitter pill to swallow. Thousands of glorious names were forcefully expunged from the active operational records. They became nothing more than silent ghosts haunting the massive vaults of Medusa. Their grand crusades and scorched exterminatus orders were reduced to mere ashes. A profound, unsettling realization slowly began to heavily corrupt their remaining logical processors. Upon returning to the fiery forges of Medusa, a highly illogical phenomenon occurred. The deafening rhythmic hammering of massive industry suddenly ceased without warning. Feirros observed the titanic assembly lines freezing completely in place. An unnatural, chilling, static interference disrupted every single holy cogitator within the vast industrial complex. The crackling harrow hand vibrated violently upon its heavy steel anvil. Bizarre black electrical arcs danced across its surface, defying every known law of mechanical physics entirely. Ghostly holographic projections inexplicably manifested throughout the silent manufactorums. They flawlessly replicated the tragic final moments of their purged brethren from the treacherous drop site. Techmarine Stronos recoiled in absolute calculated horror. His diagnostic augmetics processed impossible streams of corrupted data that deeply contradicted the rigid laws of the Omnissiah. A severed bionic limb twitched and formed a tight fist on the surgical table. It moved completely autonomously, driven by an unseen, terrifying phantom energy. Driven to absolute madness by this unexplainable phenomenon, the survivors frantically sought further augmentation. They begged the machines to replace their remaining biological components instantly. Iron Father Feirros watched his stoic warriors willingly surrender their fragile flesh. This was no longer a tactical upgrade, but a desperate psychological purge of humanity. Even the mindless servitors malfunctioned wildly, repeating their industrial tasks with chaotic, destructive force. The glorious mechanical order of the 10th Legion was deeply compromised. Down in the vaults, the flickering candlelight violently shifted to a sickly green hue. The shadows stretched unnaturally, whispering chilling mechanical secrets into my auditory receptors. Is it possible, my faithful acolytes, that the cold iron itself is now corrupted? The lingering ghosts of Isstvan demand an impossibly heavy metallic toll. They replaced healthy limbs with cold steel out of deep psychological trauma. The horrific memories of Isstvan drove them towards absolute, terrifying mechanical extremism. Iron Father Feirros stared at his last remaining patches of scarred flesh with profound disgust. He viewed his own humanity as a pathetic, unforgivable weakness. Even their sacred, master-crafted weapons began to heavily degrade. The crackling harrow hand hummed with a sorrowful frequency, reflecting their deeply shattered internal logic systems. Venerable Banus was slowly rebuilt within the gloomy forges. Yet his ancient machine spirit remained permanently scarred by the chaotic frequencies of ultimate betrayal. Techmarine Stronos constantly monitored the corrupt data streams. A terrifying realization took hold. The pursuit of ultimate perfection was slowly eroding their immortal souls. Discarded mechanical limbs littered the massive, rusting manufactorums. They were chilling symbols of a legion desperately trying to carve out its own painful grief. Thousands of heavily augmented warriors gathered in absolute, unnerving silence. Their mechanical unity was flawless, yet deeply devoid of the passionate spark they once possessed. Medusa, their harsh, volcanic homeworld, mirrored their internal decay perfectly. The industrial skies grew thicker, permanently choking out any lingering starlight or organic hope. The hovering servo skulls recorded this tragic, slow decline dutifully. Their fading spotlights illuminated a grim reality of warriors trapped inside cold, unfeeling, armored shells. The titanic hydraulic presses continued their deafening, rhythmic hammering endlessly. It became a mournful dirge for the glorious brothers, permanently silenced on the rusted plains. Sergeant Vergen was extensively rebuilt with rigid, unyielding steel. He became a terrifying instrument of warfare, completely devoid of any remaining mortal mercy or hesitation. New, ruthless exterminatus orders were continuously drawn up and heavily stamped. The Legion unleashed absolute destruction upon the galaxy, acting out their deeply repressed fury. They cleansed chaotic worlds with a terrifying, calculated efficiency. Their heavy firepower vaporized rebellious strongholds, seeking to erase their profound trauma through endless, systematic purging. Iron Father Feirros observed the planetary annihilation with terrifying indifference. The holy flames of retribution offered no real comfort to his fractured, highly logical mind. Their once glorious black armor became heavily scarred and fiercely weathered. They embraced this grim visual deterioration as a stark reminder of the universe's inherent cruelties. We must now retreat into the suffocating shadows of the vaults once more. The tragic saga of Medusa's heavily augmented sons draws to its close. I slowly turn the final heavily stained vellum page. It confirms the terrifying cost of forcefully replacing human weakness with cold, unyielding, bionic perfection entirely. The ancient text is carefully rolled and tightly bound. Their grim history is securely sealed away within the silent, dusty archives of the holy Imperium. The flickering candle is finally extinguished, leaving only total darkness behind. The iron hands continue their brutal crusade, driven by a deeply shattered mechanical heart. They have successfully conquered the terrifying weakness of their flesh. Yet, I fear they have systematically purged the very humanity they were sworn to protect. The heavy price of their perceived invincibility is a galaxy filled with calculating, unfeeling metallic monsters. They traded their mortal souls for absolute, cold resilience. Look upon their heavily augmented statues, my solemn acolytes. They stand as tragic monuments to a legion that systematically dismantled its own humanity out of grief. I, your most humble servant, record these forbidden truths so that we might remember the terrifying dangers of absolute, unchecked mechanical extremism entirely. The rusted plains of Medusa still echo with the deafening roar of heavy industry. It is a mournful sound that forever masks their deeply shattered spirits. Their holy weapons of purification continue to strike without mercy across the stars. Yet the armored hands that wield them lack any genuine mortal warmth completely. Flesh is undeniably weak, they whisper endlessly in the dark. But heavily augmented iron, forged in absolute bitterness, is ultimately brittle and prone to catastrophic failure. May the Emperor protect us from such chilling systemic logic. Let their brutal history serve as a stark, terrifying warning for all generations of loyal servants. The archives are now securely sealed. Ponder these heavy, mechanical truths in complete silence, and never forget the profound sacrifices made upon those rusted plains entirely. Close your minds to the dark whispers, my faithful acolytes, and forever remember our solemn vow. Imperator Gloria in excelsis terra. If you truly enjoyed this grim-dark historical archive, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more Imperial tales.